Hello again, friends. We had enough questions over the last few days via email and messages that we can do an entire impromptu mailbag episode. So that's what we're going to do. It's a mail call. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, and welcome back to another edition of Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren, and you can unfollow me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, and of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Feel free to be part of the program. Send questions on Twitter that you'd like answered on the show. Please feel free to give us a thumbs up, a subscribe, all that fun stuff. 5-star reviews on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts at. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets and when they win $5 on the money line. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, before we get into the mailbag, we did have a couple of news items that I wanted to touch on. We'll go with the less serious one first. MLB Trade Rumors posting their non-tender candidates. So basically players, it's usually the arbitration eligibles. Every now and then a player gets non-tendered before they're arbitration eligible, but it's pretty uncommon. But they listed 3 Twins players among the non-tender candidates for this offseason cycle: Kyle Farmer, Nick Gordon, and Jorge Alcala. They have Farmer projected for in this range of $6-ish million, and then Gordon and Alcala are $1 million each. Bigger issue with Gordon out of options, so depending on if there's room for him on the roster, it could be tricky, and maybe the Twins just go that route right out of the chute. Jorge Alcala has given the Twins almost nothing the last few years. There's a lot of potential there, but I don't know if it's enough to pay him $1 million, especially when they balked at doing the same for Matt Whistler after 2020, when he had a much better run than we've seen Alcala have a sustained run for. The other thing I want to talk about, and it's news that broke on Tuesday, and it was that the Twins and Dick Bramer are parting company after 40 seasons of him being the play-by-play voice of the Twins on television. And it came as a surprise, to say the least, when the press release came through. And then as some of the dogged and determined journalists found out in this town, it was not due to health issues. It was not, basically, it more or less sounds like it was not Dick's decision to walk away. And so certainly a tough pill to swallow for fans who, especially if people who like continuity and were bummed that Bert Blyleven in the last few years had been, more or less pushed out, I think is probably fair to say. So to have another basically pillar of the broadcasting community for the Twins, 40 years is no joke. And so to have him feel or be pushed out, and again, Dick Bramer's all class. He's not going to say that. He's not going to come out and say that. But, we have it on good authority that it wasn't his decision 100%. It's not that I don't support the idea of finding another broadcaster. It's just that, Dick had mentioned he hoped he hadn't lost his fastball. And I don't think he necessarily had. There were times where I think maybe the judgment on fly balls was a little bit iffy. But in other words, I thought every other way, I thought Dick was as good as I remember watching him growing up, back in the MSC days. So to me, it was a surprising move, not one that I am 100% against or 100% for. But I also don't want to see someone not go out on their own terms. And he was verging on, if I'm not mistaken, 5,000 broadcasts. Would have been nice to see him get to that number, but who knows? It would be nice if it was going to be, he could fill it or something, get those last few in. But it's just not going to happen. So we'll be curious to see if they go on a national search, if they promote Corey Provis from radio, which would be a curious decision. One I would not be against, but he does paint a good picture on the radio with broadcasts and all that. So I do think it would be tough to lose him on the radio side, but he'd do a great job on the TV side too. But above all, this is just a thank you to Dick Bramer, because he was the voice of a lot of us growing up. Herb Carneal was for a lot of people. Halsey Hall was for a lot of people. John Gordon was for a lot of people on the radio side. But on the TV side, it's been Dick Bramer and only Dick Bramer. He's had a cast of characters next to him: Jim Cott, Tommy John, Burt Blyleven. At times it was, any number of rotating players through that seat, including, current guys, Justin Morneau, LaTroy Hawkins. And at the same time, he was that constant. He was that voice that was always going to be there every single night at 7:10 p.m., welcoming you to the ball game, directing traffic with whoever he had as his color commentator. So again, happy trails, Dick. Wish you the best. Wish this wasn't the case, but not much we can do about it either. So again, thank you. Left-handed toast. All I have is water here with me, but we'll give him a left-handed toast for all of his great service. So we're doing a mailbag episode today, and I got a whole bunch of good questions, just absolutely incredible questions. So I'm going to try, let's see, we got a little bit of time here to fill before we hit our first break. I'm going to go with this one from Leslie from Lino Lakes. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm trying a new feature here where I have the crawl on the bottom of the screen. So we'll find out if it's good, bad, distracting, or what exactly. But Leslie from Lino Lakes wants to know, how worried are you about the team's television deal or lack thereof? Well, I think we all know, or I figured out that TV rights and everything are going to be up in the air this offseason. Bally is obviously in a world of hurt. And so there's a lot of balls in the air as far as, figuring out how Twins broadcast rights are going to be handled next year and the budget that goes with it, or in this case, the budget that goes away from it. And so the thing I fall back on, and something, people keep saying, well, what if the budget's slashed? Valid point, valid question. However, what applies to the rest of, or what applies to the Twins will likely apply to much of the rest of the league. A lot of, I think 20-some teams are on these RSNs that are owned by Bally or the whatever Fox subsidiary that is. And then you've got some regional networks like Yes and SNY East and Nesson for the Red Sox and a few others. The White Sox are on their own. The Cubs are on their own. It's probably around 20, I think, are in the family of Fox networks. And so I think whatever the playing field does for all those other teams, it's going to do to the Twins. And so I'm trying not to get too worked up about it. And again, I think the Twins, they banked a fair amount of money in the dark days of Target Field, 2011, 12, 13, 14, et cetera, where they're like, well, we're not going to compete, so we're not going to sign a bunch of free agents, and the payroll dipped. I do think they've dipped into that to cover Correa or to justify Correa, but I do think that it's a factor. I think it's an overrated factor for how this offseason is going to look. We've had a lot of discussion about budgets and all that, and I feel like at the end of the offseason, we don't look back and be like, oh, there was this move they should have made, but they leaned on their budget as a reason not to. So, I saw Patrick Royce say it's not likely to be up in the $50 million range like the last one was. And I don't know what to make of that, honestly. But I think, again, the fact that there are going to be a lot of teams scrambling, to me, levels the playing field a fair amount to where I'm not going to allow myself to worry that much about it. Let's pause for a quick second, talk about our friends at FanDuel, and then we're going to come around the bend with some really great questions that you guys asked. So first, let's talk about FanDuel. So our friends over at FanDuel want you to know that you can score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. So if you've got your favorite NFL team and you think they got a good chance to win, or if you want to be like a lot of Minnesota fans and hedge your bets. If they lose, you win money. And if they win, at least you're happy they won. You've got that option. And again, $150 if your bet and your team wins. Now, if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options. Whatever you like, whether it's spreads, player props, overs, unders, you name it, whatever you want to bet on, they have it for you. And again, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. It's the no-brainer of the century. Again, $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. That's FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. So we are back here into our second segment of the program. We call it the bullpen. And thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. If you're an everyday or swing back, we're going to have Tom Schreier of Zone Coverage on the program on Thursday. We'll talk a little off-season planning and see what he thinks the Twins should take as a path, what I think the Twins should take as a path, and what the difference is as far as if he views it the same way I do, which I suspect he won't, but we'll find out. So look for that on Thursday late morning. Beyond that, though, again, I'm going to be talking to Matt Cantorino here at some point. Just have to get that scheduled, but have planted the seed and he has agreed to come on. And beyond that, too, if you have ideas for subjects you want to hear about, players you want to hear from, let me know. I'll do my best to track them down. I have enough, I would say, contacts in the game to get a fair amount of players. I can't get, everybody. I don't know that I could get Byron Buxton, but no harm in trying. So if you have ideas for what you'd like to make this show better, I would be all ears if you have that. All right. So we are again into the bullpen. Here is our first question of segment number 2. Billy from Bemidji says, I keep hearing we shouldn't expect the Twins to bring back Sonny Gray. Now, why is that? So, well, first of all, this team has not shown a tendency to pay pitching big. That tendency was bucked with Pablo Lopez. But if you think about how this front office has built a roster, how it views players by age, years of control, and years that they want to give in an extension, or I guess it wouldn't be technically an extension here, but you can follow the train of thought. If the Twins were interested in giving a pitcher a multi-year deal, usually it's going to be a younger guy, a guy with a bigger arm like Pablo Lopez. Now, with that said, Sonny Gray is positioned perfectly to get paid a lot of money. In 2023, he was worth 5.3 Fangraphs WAR. The previous 2 years combined, he was worth 4.9. That's his last year with Cincy and his first year with the Twins. Neither of which were bad years. He was just that good this season. Now, I think the Twins will offer him a Kiwo. I think that's a slam dunk. It is a slam dunk, and we don't need to pretend. He turns 34 in less than a week. So you're going into age 34, 35-ish seasons if you were to do a 2-year deal. He can probably land, I would guess, like a 4-year deal based on his age, the fact that he doesn't really light up the radar gun. He's more of a, put it where you want kind of guy, command, control, front end with the 2-seam fastball or front door 2-seam fastball and all that sort of stuff. And also, just kind of gauging the things he said or like kind of how I perceive him, he doesn't strike me as a guy who is going to need the biggest deal. He's going to want to get paid, and as he should. But I also get the vibe that if there was a better fit for him on a 2-year deal with good money, I think he would choose that rather than 4 or 5 years someplace else just because there's more money involved. So if you give him a reasonable offer from the Twins for 2 years, I think he would consider signing it. I'm just not sure that offer is coming. I think they're going to take the pick. I think the fact that they're a revenue sharing team and he's probably going to get over $50 million, meaning they're going to get a pick at the behind the first round. So top 40 pick probably. Top 40 pick or right around there. I think they're going to take that and run. Again, no disrespect to Sonny, and not because they don't like him, not because they don't appreciate what he gave to them. But I just think they're going to go the route of let's find a pitcher who we think is not at the peak of their value and get them to the peak of their value without paying them at the peak of their value. In other words, if you try to trade for Pablo Lopez now versus a year ago, you'd pay a lot more. The Twins want to be the before and then reap the benefits of the after, which, to their credit, they've done a fairly decent job of with a few different guys. So the Twins want to be a before, not an after. And so that's why I don't think Sonny Gray is going to come back. So I don't think you have to worry about it too much. And it's a shame because Sonny was a consummate professional as a Twin, seemed to enjoy it here. But unless he wants to go year to year, which I think is more the speed of someone like Kenta Maeda, I don't think it's going to happen here. I don't. So it's a bum deal because, again, I appreciated and like watching Sonny Gray pitch. And now all we're going to see is whatever Chase Petty does from this point forward for the Reds. So, yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Here's one. Brett from Detroit Lakes says, I like when the Twins bring back former players as long as they can still contribute. Do you think they'll do that this offseason at all? And if so, who do you think it'll be? I left out that last part on the screen. I apologize. So let's just go through. I scanned the MLB Trade Rumors free agents list, and here's who I found for position players who are going to be free agents. So Mitch Garver, Gary Sanchez, Donnie Solani. I'm counting guys who are on the Twins this year too, just because, hey, maybe they'll want to bring them back. CJ Crone, Jonathan Scope, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, we hardly knew ye. Josh Donaldson, Eduardo Escobar has an option for $9 million. Gio Urshela is coming back from a fractured pelvis, but is going to be a free agent. Robbie Grossman is going to be a free agent, maybe one with a World Series ring on his finger. Jordan Luplow, Eddie Rosario might be. He's got an option. Michael A. Taylor, Aaron Hicks, Joey Gallo, and Nelson Cruz. Nelson Cruz has been a free agent for a bit here. Unclear if he'll be able to continue his career, but I would guess unlikely just based on how it ended last year. But I'm gonna split it into position players and pitchers, and we'll pick one of each. And honestly, as like unsexy as it sounds, either Donovan Solano or Michael A. Taylor is probably my answer. But if you don't want someone who is a holdover, so again, if you don't want to bring back somebody, I will say this. I don't think it's going to happen, but it'd be interesting. What about Mitch Garver as a DH / first baseman / maybe last ditch option at catcher? With a 26-man roster having 3 guys who can theoretically catch, and again, I don't think Garver's going to catch going forward much at all, if at all. But in a pinch, you could have him back there. The bat is good enough that if you wanted him to be a lefty masher and then, play a fair amount, mix and match based on matchups, it would give you good insurance at DH, where we don't really know what Byron Buxton is going to be capable of or what he's going to do. You could have him at first base again, platoon stuff with Kirilloff. There's still, Donovan Solano played a lot of first base this year. There's going to be opportunities. As much as you'd like to believe Alex Kirilloff will stay healthy, you have to hedge against it. Now, is it worth it to do it with Mitch Garver? I don't know. The projection / prediction I saw on The Athletic, and consider the source because it was, we'll just say Ralph, and I think you probably know who I'm talking about. Said 2 years and $16 million. At that price point, I think I could justify bringing in Mitch Garver. I don't know how he feels about the Twins anymore, though. So who knows? But I'm saying if I were to pick a position player, it would be Mitch Garver. Now we move over to the pitching side of things, and it's an interesting list. Jake Odorizzi is going to be a free agent. Sonny Gray, Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn is an $18 million option that's not going to get exercised. Kent is a free agent. Tyler Mahle is a free agent. Rich Hill is a free agent. You got Martin Perez, Dylan Floro. Liam Hendricks has an option that's going to be declined just due to the fact that he's hurt right now. Michael Fulmer, Jorge Lopez, Emilio Pagan, and our good friend Devin Smeltzer actually appears on the list as well. Of those guys, it's Kenta. It has to be Kenta. If the Twins can do so, Hiroki Kuroda at the end of his career with the Yankees was kind of like a 1+1+1+1 guy. He just kept re-upping for a year at a time until it just didn't happen anymore, right? I could see the Twins wanting to do something like that with Maeda, who probably has not put up enough tape, enough on his resume since coming back from Tommy John, where someone's going to give him a multi-year deal for big money. If you're the Twins, you know a lot about Kenta Maeda. You're willing to go for a year, and I don't know, I'd probably go like $12 million. Like, for a 1-year deal with that level of flexibility, I would be in favor. I think Jorge Lopez should come back on a minor league deal. I love the arm. Hopefully he can get things right as far as, command and the stuff that dogged him all season to the point where he played on 3 different teams, including the team that helped him break out, DFAing him at the end of the year. So it's Kenta for me. I'd like to see him bring back Tyler Mahle, but it's hard for me not to feel like that ship has sailed. It just didn't seem like that was a consideration. I love Martin Perez's stuff. I don't think they're going to take that ride again, though. Tyler Gibson's not going to be in the picture. Floro's not going to be in the picture. I don't think Pagan will. I think Pagan's going to go get paid, and good for him. If a reliever can get paid, they should. And so really on the list, it's Maeda for me, and that's pretty much it. All right, let's move on to another one from Sean from Sioux Falls. What's the plan in center field if Byron Buxton can't play out there again? And as much as, we're going to be just kind of guessing, the Twins are going to know better than us. Of course, they're going to know better than us. But again, you'll be able to read between the lines, and I'll be able to read between the lines if they trade for another player similar to Michael A. Taylor, or if they re-sign Michael A. Taylor. That would signal pessimism, clearly. Because Taylor as a free agent with the money he can probably command, you really don't want to give that to a 4th outfielder. And that's what Michael A. Taylor would be with a healthy Byron Buxton. I keep coming back to Cody Bellinger, and I don't think they're going to do it. I think it would be a good fit because he plays center, he plays first, and the Twins have 2 injury-prone, easy for me to say, players at those spots. That would make a lot of sense to me. If they're going to pay big money to anybody, that's who I would choose. And maybe they're paying big money. Maybe that's where the budget comes back to, is they're going to ride with what they have plus some interesting additions here or there, maybe a utility player like Whit Merrifield. I did see the Twins on his potential fits list on The Athletic. And that'd be fine. It just wouldn't be all that exciting. And I wouldn't apply to this Buxton situation either. But I do think there's going to have to be more than just, hey, let's hope against hope that if he can't go, Willie Castro can pick it up on the fly, or Nick Gordon and Willie Castro can platoon together to play center, because Michael A. Taylor made enough plays this year that it more than justified his being on the team before you consider setting a career high with more than 20 homers and just in general, not being an offensive zero. He had at-bats or plate appearances where he swung at everything and that's kind of his forte. But he was good enough to be on the roster, bat ninth, and give you some pretty great game-saving defensive plays. I mean, game one against Toronto alone showed you his value. So I'll be watching what they do. I would consider myself pessimistic that Buxton will start the season in center field, but I think the odds are better that he'll play center field next year than they were this year. I don't know what that means necessarily because, again, the further we get from the injury, it's probably less and less likely. But I feel like they're going to know more from this year, what worked and what didn't work, to get him on the field, to treat it differently. And so I'm hopeful that gets him back to a spot where he can play, because this team is immensely, immensely in a better spot with a healthy Byron Buxton. It's just a matter of if that player still exists there anymore. Cody from St. Paul wants to know, which Twin on the 40-man roster do you think is most likely to be traded this offseason? I came up with two. There's nobody really on the pitcher side that makes sense for me to trade. Now, with that said, if somebody called and said, hey, we really like Bailey Ober, we're going to offer you, this player, and it's a very good center field type player. Like, let's say it's not going to happen this way, but if the Blue Jays called up and offered Dalton Varsho, you'd make that trade. But that's not going to happen. I don't see it happening. But that would be the kind of guy you'd want to target. Who can play catcher, who can play outfield, gives you some versatility, nice player, lots of value defensively, and has shown in the past that he can hit. Didn't do it that much this year. But the two guys that I think are most likely to move, two very different players in terms of how they're viewed in the organization. Nick Gordon missed the lion's share of the season after breaking a bone in his foot, and he is now a non-tender candidate, as we mentioned at the open of the program. He could be on the move if there's a team that says, hey, we're only going to have to pay him $1 million in arbitration. He can play a little bit of everywhere, and maybe we can find a spot for him to start. I think of teams like the Royals, Tigers, Guardians even, teams that need a little juice offensively or just looking for players who can be guys for them. Like, don't get me wrong, the Tigers made impressive strides, but they're still looking for guys they can plug and play on offense. Gordon, you can plug and play a lot of different places. He's probably not going to get that opportunity to start every day here. If someone calls and says, hey, we want him to play second base for us every day in Kansas City. Let's just hypothetical. We're not trying to push anybody off that roster or anything. I think that could happen. But if they go the route of an established player getting traded, I think the writing is on the wall that it would be Jorge Polanco. And I would hate it. I love Jorge Polanco. I've enjoyed watching him since he came up. He seems to always have kind of a cool demeanor about him at the plate. Doesn't seem to – very rarely does he have a plate appearance where he doesn't look in control up there, which I value greatly. He's become a good defensive second baseman, and he's just a guy who, like, you could hit him anywhere first to sixth, and he wouldn't be out of position in any of those spots. There's a lot of people like, oh, there's Royce Lewis. Brooks Lee is close. Don't get it twisted. You still need as many good players as you can fit onto a roster. Donovan Solano was third on this team in plate appearances this year. Third. He was signed he's the last big league contract they handed out, a couple $1 million, and everybody thought, what the heck, where's this guy going to play? Well, everywhere, apparently. And so I don't like the idea of trading Polanco at all. Now, if you could trade him and get back a really interesting starting pitcher, that's when the wheels start turning. For me, if you can find the guy that you want, that you control for a couple years, think you can get their stuff to spike a little bit, et cetera, that is probably the only instance that I would trade Polanco. But with that said, this front office is not that tied to him. They signed the extension, but he and Kepler are both on options this offseason, which I fully expect to be exercised. But could one or both of them get traded? Absolutely. especially when you consider that they're good players making a reasonable salary on a one-year deal. If teams are looking to cut costs, it's going to be way better of an option to get Max Kepler on a one-year deal than it would be to give a multi-year deal to someone like Michael Conforto for big money, or even the same money but more years. So I think there could be interest in Polanco. I think there could be interest in Kepler. My hope is that both are on the team on opening day next year, but I'm just being selfish. That's it. That's a wrap for this edition of Locked On Twins. Make sure to come back on Thursday. We'll have Tom Schreier on from Zone Coverage. Make sure you like, subscribe, 5-star review on iTunes, all that fun stuff. Love to hear from you. Otherwise, though, this is Brandon Warren signing off saying thank you so much, and we'll see you again real soon. This is Locked On Twins.